All right, folks, we have come to the end of the 90s. It's sad, I know, because they were such a fantastic decade, but it had to happen. The important thing to know is that it's going to end with a bang. The computers are going to crash, planes are going to come falling from the skies, and it will be over, thanks to the Y2K bug. Well, we know that didn't happen, but we do need to talk about the final year of the 90s, and that is 1999, the year that people were worried about the Y2K bug. The 90s were such a fantastic year that we dedicated an entire series of our podcast to 1999 called 9 Weeks of 99. Yeah, that's how great 1999 was. It was so great, we had an entire podcast on the subject. And one of the big things that we talked about that year was movies. Jamie's argument was that 1999 was the greatest year in movies. And it could be. Some of what might be considered the best movies of all time even were released in 1999. Again, I don't know about that one. Talk to Jamie about it. We've done podcasts about it in the past, and that's his opinion. I do agree with him, though. It was certainly a good year for movies. With the exception, of course, the number one movie of 1999 that made the most money and is also considered to be the worst Star Wars movie in the series. And that's Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Why was it terrible? CGI. Terrible, terrible CGI. Terrible CGI'd characters. And it was huge. It made $431 million at the box office. Why did it make so much money? Because it was Star Wars, and we were all starved for Star Wars at that point in time. Of course, now we're not, thanks to Disney taking over Lucasfilm. We've got way more Star Wars than most of us would want. The number 2 film that year, The Sixth Sense. Now this was a good film. M. Night Shyamalan, Bruce Willis, and a little boy who sees dead people. Did you see the twist coming at the end? I won't tell you what it is if you haven't seen it. I actually didn't, or at least I'm trying to remember, at what point I figured it out. Probably around the same time Bruce Willis did, which is a great sign of a movie because I usually figure out how it's going to end quite early. Made $293 million at the box office, made M. Night Shyamalan a household name. He, of course, has made numerous fantastic films and a few stinkers. Austin Powers' The Spy Who Shagged Me was released that year, number 4 on the top list. I love that film. That film was so quotable. After watching that film, I quoted the hell out of it. People I hung out with quoted the hell out of it. I had the DVD. And honestly, I'm of the opinion The Spy Who Shagged Me is the best film out of the trilogy. The first one was great, don't get me wrong, but this one took what worked in the first one and made it better, and it added new stuff. It added Fat Bastard. It had the whole little bit. I had worked at Starbucks for quite a few years, so the little Starbucks bit at the beginning was great. Robert Wagner was great. And of course, come on, Heather Graham. Hello! Heather, I know you're married. It's okay. So am I. We'll leave our spouses. We'll run off together, and we'll be happy forever and ever together. You and me, Heather. Just think about it. Just think about it. Best one in the series. And of course, we can't mention 1999 without The Matrix, the trend-setting film by the Wachowski now sisters. That movie had some of the coolest special effects that when you watched it then, you were like, how the heck was that done? And of course, has been copied and copied and copied ever since. Keanu Reeves, perfect person to play that character. Lawrence Fishburne, Carrie-Anne Moss. Yeah, it was absolutely amazing film. Won 4 Oscars, totally deserved. And sequels, unfortunately, went downhill, especially with the 4th one. But let's not talk about that. Let's just focus on the first Matrix. The Mummy, the first Mummy film was released with Brendan Fraser. Hello, talk about other big crushes of mine at the time. Rachel Weisz, such a cutie in that film. And hey, I'll say it. Guys, I'd go for Brendan Fraser in that film. He's a handsome, handsome fellow there. Both of them together. Yeah, that was great. Some of the special effects might hold up, not hold up. But in general, they definitely hold up. And it's a good film. And people I know that love that film, and me and my wife, will still watch that film. If it's on, or even sometimes we'll be like, you know what, let's watch The Mummy. It's such a good film. Love it. Remember the Blair Witch Project? See, this is the thing about 1999 that makes it such a great year for movies. So many of these movies I'm mentioning have been copied and parodied and remade and redone and referenced in other movies and TV shows because they were so stinking good. The Blair Witch Project kind of makes you feel a bit nauseous with that found footage thing. But again, people were watching that film and they're like, oh my God, is that real? I don't know. Is that real? Maybe it might be real. And everybody was talking about it. Fantastic. There's a reason why that was number 10 on the list. Other awesome films that came out that year. I guess I mentioned Far City Blues. I think that was huge. I didn't much care for it. She's All That, which was kind of a cute, like teen-ish rom-com. Blast from the Past, that was a fun one. Another Brendan Fraser film with Alicia Silverstone. You don't hear much about that. We've talked about it. Did we talk about that at some point in the podcast? We might have mentioned it in passing. Good film, totally worth watching. And Office Space, hello. That's like on the 80s and 90s Uncensored top 10 comedy list. Again, referenced, parodied, my life. I just wrote a novel, not kidding, and I compare it to The Office Space. It's a bit darker. I don't know if it'll ever get published because I'm trying to find somebody to publish it, but they don't seem to want it because I'm not famous enough. Jerks. Anyway, let's get off that subject. And I mention Office Space when I talk about influences for that novel. 200 Cigarettes. Yeah, that was an interesting film. I'm going to mention it, but yeah. 8mm, also good. Nicolas Cage. It's one that doesn't get referenced a lot, but it actually was real good. Joel Schumacher. It's one of his. I'm not a Joel Schumacher fan. My wife's a really good friend of mine's wife is a huge Joel Schumacher fan. I can see why she likes him. I think he misses more than he hits, but 8mm was definitely a hit. Harold Ramis directed Robert De Niro and Billy Crystal and Analyze This, Cruel Intentions, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. Go. You might not remember Go. I had the DVD of this too, actually. I really liked it. It was made by Doug Liman. Timothy Olyphant wasn't huge at the time, but he had a memorable character in Go. Scott Wolf. A lot of good people were in that film. It's kind of one of those under-the-radar films, but it's good. It's worth mentioning. It came out in 99. Notting Hill for all the rom-com fans. Run Lola Run. Totally kick-ass independent film that, again, has been parodied a lot and referenced because it was so good. Big Daddy, the South Park movie. They all weren't winners. We had Wild Wild West that year. The first of the American Pie series, another one that I really enjoyed. The humor in that is hilarious. I know today's modern audiences aren't huge fans of it because some of the sexual references and inappropriate behavior, but it's fun. Come on, people, just relax and enjoy it. Stir of Echoes, American Beauty, Three Kings, Fight Club. I guess I should talk about that one. Hello. That film is fantastic. Great book, great film. Another one of those just perfect films, totally worth watching. Being John Malkovich, Dogma, Sleepy Hollow, Tim Burton and Johnny Depp, Christina Ricci. Holy Smoke, cool independent film with Kate Winslet. Cider House Rules, another cool independent film. Green Mile, Tom Hanks, come on, that film's great. Man on the Moon, Jim Carrey, great soundtrack. Galaxy Quest, the movie that everybody wanted a sequel for, but unfortunately never got made. I mean, the list just goes on. And I probably haven't touched on something that you love, but I got to move on to another subject because I've only got 30 minutes here, and we haven't even gotten into anything else. So let's jump over from movies to music. I mentioned Eminem in the last episode. Well, we got the Slim Shady LP released. Another big song from that year, Baby One More Time, the debut solo album by American singer Britney Spears. Yeah, that's right. Her first album was released that year and made her super famous. And unfortunately, sexualized an underage girl. But, that was the time. Hopefully, we've learned a little bit since then because, she was huge. That album was huge. And there you go. I don't know what else to say on it. Looking at the top Billboard list of that year, Cher was number one with Believe. I believe in life after love. Come on, I was going to do that, right? I hope so. We also had Sixpence None the Richer with Kiss Me. So the thing about that song is it got used in a lot of movies and different versions of it. It was pretty much their only top charting hit. Can't think of any other Sixpence None the Richer songs. It got played a lot. I liked it, it kind of works well for singing along to, and it works well. You go out to like a restaurant or something and it might be playing. It's a good song. I'll still sing along with it. I'm not going to do it now. I figured I'd torture you enough with the Cher song. Along with Britney Spears, we had this like competition between her and Christina Aguilera, the former Disney kids, duking it out to see who was going to be the top of the charts. All the music news reporters pitting them against each other. But to my understanding, they didn't really have much of a rivalry in person. Sugar Ray's Every Morning, Livin' La Vida Loca. Ugh, Ricky Martin. Man, I hated that song. I still hate that song. It got played to death. Backstreet Boys were back in the day enjoying their place at number 15 on the charts at I Want It That Way, which kind of surprised me. It wasn't higher on the charts. Maybe it moved a little higher in the next year or the previous year. I mentioned Sarah McLachlan with the Lilith Fair. She had Angel out that year. That was number 18 on the charts. So a lot of good stuff. And I'm going to mention, luckily it was only 23 on the charts, but that's still too high for it. But this is the last song I'm going to mention out of everything that was out that year. Last Kiss by Pearl Jam. A remake of a song that I used to like, but then Pearl Jam went and ruined it by torturing us with the nails on the blackboard of Eddie Vedder's voice. I'm going to mention one thing in sports. It's the only thing worth mentioning. And that's Wayne Gretzky played his final game. The great one, ended his career. So, yeah, Wayne Gretzky, to this day, accurately so, is considered to be the greatest hockey player of all time. He holds many records still. So, yeah, that's Wayne Gretzky. The thing about Wayne Gretzky is he also happens to be one of the most quoted, I think, athletes of all time, perhaps. How many offices have you walked into and seen you miss 100% of the shots you don't take? When I worked at Microsoft, they actually had a poster on the wall, I'm not joking, in one of our offices that had that quote. You hear that constantly. You'll never catch me bragging about goals, but I'll talk about my assists. I skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it has been. Yeah, you could go on and on reading his quotes and memes and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, Wayne Gretzky decided to retire in 1999, played his last game. It was his 1,487th game of his 20 seasons in the NHL. Let's jump over to television. We had a lot of premieres that happened in 1999. Some great ones. The Sopranos, water cooler show that everybody was talking about. Series finale that everybody was talking about because they, I think, to my understanding, intended to do a movie, which never happened because James Gandolfini unfortunately died. Jon Stewart debuted as the host of The Daily Show. This year, he's actually rejoined the show on Monday nights and as a producer, and he's great. Trevor Noah, who replaced him, I also think is great. And it'd be nice if they found a regular host instead of the rotating thing that they've been doing lately. I don't like it. I want them to find a host that I can get behind and watch. But Jon Stewart, come on, he's the best. He took over the show. He wasn't the original host, but certainly probably, I think, the best in my opinion. The Family Guy premiered on Fox, January 31st. The Denver Broncos won their second Super Bowl of 2 in a row, beating the Atlantic Falcons 34-19. And then The Family Guy premiered. What's funny about it, and I don't think a lot of people have realized this, it got canceled. So they did, I want to say 3 seasons, maybe it was 4, and it got canceled because it was on Fox, and Fox likes to cancel shows. Basically, Fox was the Netflix of today. And yeah, it got canceled, but they released the series on DVD, and the DVD sales became so popular that it motivated them to bring the show back. And they did, and it has been back ever since. Futurama was also released on Fox, another popular show that went on for a really long time. A lot of people loved it. And one I want to talk about is The Man Show. This was a short-lived show on Comedy Central. So it started off with Adam Carolla and Jimmy Kimmel. Yeah, that's right, the late night talk show guy. And it was wholeheartedly inappropriate. I mean, come on, it's called The Man Show. They had scenes that called girls jumping on trampolines was one of the reoccurring thing. The two did the show at first. They eventually left the show, and it was taken over by Joe Rogan and Doug Stanhope, who they retooled a little bit. It wasn't good in 2003 when that happened. The first bit from 99 to 2003 with Carolla and Kimmel, that's the good era if you can track it down. But yeah, it certainly, there's no way you could get that show on the air nowadays. Wholeheartedly inappropriate. That's part of what made it fun. I liked it. It was fun. If you're up late at night, you watch it, you laugh at the inappropriate jokes and inappropriate behavior, and then probably go to sleep because at that point in time, you're probably tired. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire premiered with Regis Philbin, the American version of the British show. The TV series Angel premiered, the spin-off of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Roswell premiered also on the WB to help expand that channel's offerings. A short-lived show that should have stayed on, Freaks and Geeks. If you look at the cast of Freaks and Geeks, they have all gone on to do other amazing things. I'm not joking. You had Linda Cardinelli, John Francis Daley, James Franco, Sam Levine, Seth Rogen, Jason Segel, it on and on and on, right? It was a great teen comedy that just unfortunately, I don't know, wasn't allowed to stay on long enough. Was that on Fox? I wonder if that was a Fox show. It probably was. That's probably why it didn't last. Hold on. No, it was NBC. NBC, how dare you? So yeah, unfortunately did one season and ended, has become kind of a popular show ever since, cult-wise. And it's unfortunately that it didn't get a chance to last because it was really absolutely brilliant. Mad About You ended. It premiered in 1992, and they did a reboot of it here recently, I think for a year or two. I don't know how long the reboot lasted. Paul Reiser, Helen Hunt, that was a really fun show showing that couple living their lives. And Star Trek Deep Space Nine ended. Premiered in 1993. I don't like Deep Space Nine. I've said it before on the show. I'm saying it again. It's certainly better than any of the new Star Trek stuff that they've been coming out with. But I just rewatched the entire series from episode 1 to the very last episode. And I'm sticking with my statement. It occasionally has a good episode. And everybody's like, oh, but it's like a character drama and this and that. No, it's not. It's boring as all get out. Occasionally they've got a decent episode worth watching, but for the most part, it's boring. Anytime you see an episode with Jake on it, you're like, oh, great, here's terrible acting. Anytime you see with Cisco, you're going to be like, oh, here's over dramatic acting. Come on, it's not good. They had an entire episode that was about a baseball game in the holodeck, or holosuites they called them. They had an entire episode that was about Cisco and Jake taking a trip on a space sail ship where nothing happens. They have, they've had so many episodes that nothing actually happens. What about all the Mirror Universe episodes? Yeah, it was fine, little thing to do in the original series. And then they brought it back in this series over and over and over again where, oh, sometimes the good people are actually bad and sometimes the bad people are good. And yet somehow it's completely alternative universe, yet basically mirrors this universe, hence the Mirror Universe. Oh, yeah, that's terrible. They bring Worf onto the series, and you're like, sweet, Worf from the Next Generation. And then they don't do anything with him. And then the other thing people say is like, oh, well, once they get into the Dominion War, then it gets good. No, it doesn't. No, they get into the Dominion War, and then there's no warring going on. You only have a couple episodes of any Dominion War stuff. The only good thing about the Dominion War was we got to see more of Gul Dukat and Jeffrey Combs playing Weyoun, because we all know Jeffrey Combs is the coolest person ever. That's it. That was the only good thing about the Dominion Wars. So overall, the series had 173 episodes, maybe 10% of those, 15% if I'm being nice, are actually good and worth watching. So that does not make a good series. Sorry, Deep Space Nine lovers. I know I'm going to get the hate mail. When Jamie hears this episode, I know he'll probably want to unfriend me and everything, but I'm sticking with it. There were just too many bad episodes that outweighed the good episodes. All right, well, I guess I probably should stop talking about Star Trek Deep Space Nine because again, I don't want to run out of 30 minutes. And no, it's not character drama, story driven. It's boring. All right. This is a space show. That's why The Next Generation is better, obviously, and Voyager is better because stuff happens. All right. I better stop talking about that and talk about something else, which in this case is going to be news and events. So let's wrap it up with that. In 1999, Bill Clinton, who I mentioned in the last episode, had his impeachment trial in the Senate. He was acquitted on the charges, as we all know, because he stayed president until the end of his term. Something I like about Bill Clinton, and this is, I don't think gets enough credit for, is the first budget surplus since 1969, according to the Congressional Budget Office. What this means is they balanced the budget and they actually started paying down the national debt. Of course, then it shot back up because the next president got into office and cut a bunch of taxes without figuring out how to pay for the things that those taxes funded and shot the debt back up, and it's been up and up and up ever since. I agree with the Republicans when it comes to fiscal conservancy. I've said this before. My problem is when they are in control of the purse, they don't follow through with their words. At least Democrats are honest about it. And they're like, yeah, we don't really care that much about the budget. Although Bill Clinton was a Democrat and he managed to work with Congress and they passed budgets that helped balance the budget. I think the U.S. government spends way too much in paying its debt fees, and it's just going up. And at some point in time, it's going to crash. I just kind of hope it's after my lifetime. In March of that year, Monica Lewinsky released her book talking about the affair. Good for her, make some money off of it. I mean, you got outed for this. You got called all kinds of names by the press, made fun of, your life ruined, while his life, didn't seem to hurt it too much. Make some money, write a book about it. I talked about Jack Kevorkian in my 1990 episode. In March of that year, he was found guilty of second-degree murder for administering lethal injection to a terminally ill man. That was his thing. He was convicted. He was convicted quickly, too. Only 2 days the trial lasted. He served as his own defense counsel. A bad decision to make. And it turned around to bite him in the booty. So he was sentenced to 10 to 24 years, but he was paroled for good behavior in 2007. And after that, he did not assist with suicides anymore. He basically went around doing speeches and appearing on talk shows and all that kind of stuff. In that episode in 1990, I mentioned the number of states that currently have death with dignity, and I got the number wrong. I've since looked it up, and there are currently 11 states where death with dignity is legal. California, Maine, Oregon, Colorado, Montana, Vermont, Washington, New Jersey, D.C., well, I guess maybe not. I don't know if you can down D.C., Hawaii, and New Mexico. There are laws in a couple of those states challenging them to repeal it, such as in New Jersey, and there are states where they're considering actually legalizing it. So it's still a debatable topic. It was debated then, so there you go. I feel like I do need to mention Columbine. We talked about this in our 99 episode, so I'm not going to talk about it too much, but obviously everybody remembers Columbine. There was movies made about it. 2 kids killed 12 students and 1 teacher and then themselves, and it has contributed to the growing gun violence. I've lived in Europe for 11 years now, and one of the things that people always bring up to me is gun violence in the U.S. because it just doesn't make sense to them. Like, how do we have a constitution that basically says, hey, yeah, everybody gets a gun? And I always have to explain, well, one, people are misinterpreting how the Constitution was written. And secondly, yeah, it sucks. You have to take lessons, take a test, and get approved to drive a car because it could kill people. Yet you can walk down to your local store and buy a gun. A couple people die from opening medications. And so now they put safety caps on everything so that people can't do that. Yet some kid gets a hold of their parents' gun, kills themselves or someone else, and there are basically no repercussions for it. Quick statistic here. I just looked this up according to the Gun Violence Archive, and unsurprisingly, the number of mass shootings is going up and up and up. In 2023, last year's numbers, 656 mass shootings compared to 2022, which had 646. So every year it goes up. What counts as a mass shooting does vary. I think generally the number is if like it's 2 or 3 or more people killed, then it falls into the category of mass shootings. If you look at the maps, interestingly enough, most of those are in deep red states, with the exception of California, which is a highly populated state. But the states generally with the most lax gun laws are the ones with the most mass shootings, which goes against the argument of, well, the only thing that'll stop a person with a gun is another person with a gun. No, you know what stops a person with a gun? Not allowing them to have the gun in the first place. I'm not saying get rid of gun laws entirely in the US. I know that would be un-American. My father owns multiple guns. I've owned weapons in the past, but I do think we need stronger regulations around it. I do think there need to be certain rules and checks that you need to go through in order to operate one. I was in the military, and they didn't just hand us a rifle and say, start shooting at the target. They taught us how to use it first and then had us start shooting at the target. And then when we were shooting at the target, they supervised us to make sure that we were doing everything correctly. Yet, again, in real world America, you can walk down to your local shop, pick up a rifle, and just start shooting whatever the hell you want. A couple things I'm going to mention in technology. Bluetooth. Cool, right? That thing that you're probably listening to this podcast on while you're driving or while you're walking down the street or, whatever. You probably got one. Sega released the Dreamcast that year, priced at $199. In the first 24 hours, they sold $97 million worth of hardware and software. Napster was being sued. NVIDIA went public. Boy, don't you wish you bought some NVIDIA stock in 1999 when they went public. And the satellite music service, XM Radio. I am going to throw out a quick call to action here and basically say, hey, even though we're done with this special series of the 80s and 90s, we've got our regular podcast available on all podcast playing apps. This is the audio-only podcast called the 80s and 90s Uncensored. Just search for the 80s and 90s Uncensored, any podcast playing app, iTunes, Spotify, whatever, you'll find it. Hit subscribe, like, listen to some past episodes, listen to our upcoming season, which is going to be the regular season, if you're not already subscribed. We've got a website, 80sand90s.com. Plenty of content on there. Jamie writes all kinds of super entertaining articles about 80s and 90s pop culture. Check them out. And of course, we got a YouTube channel, the 80s and 90s Overlooked. You might be watching this particular podcast episode on that right now. We also do cool little overlooked movie reviews that we talk about, and occasionally we'll throw out some fun video of cheesy 80s and 90s information. So make sure you subscribe to that. Anyway, hope you liked this series. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, a like, a share, a review, or whatever, depending on where you're getting it from. And I will say with that, I am out of here because the 90s are over. I'm going to go cry myself to sleep.